Gang life is often glorified in movies and music, but the reality is far darker and far more brutal. Across history, countless gangsters have met violent ends, their lives cut short by betrayal, turf wars, or ruthless rivalries. Some deaths were shocking for their sheer savagery, others for the twisted ironies that led to their downfall. These stories are a stark reminder that in the world of organized crime, no one is untouchable, and even the most feared figures can be taken down in the blink of an eye. Here are 5 of the most brutal gangster deaths ever recorded, moments that sent shockwaves through the underworld and beyond.
The bullets that ended Big Paul Castellano's life last night may very well have been a payoff for getting into such trouble with the feds. As the reputed head of the crime commission and the godfather of the Gambino family, his appearance in court every day and the preoccupation with his defense were bad for business.
On the chilly evening of December 16, 1985, the streets of Midtown Manhattan were about to witness one of the most notorious hits in mafia history. Big Paul Castellano, the powerful boss of the Gambino crime family, stepped out of his limousine outside Sparks Steakhouse, unaware that the shadows around him were alive with danger. Beside him was his loyal underboss, Thomas Bellotti, both men completely unprepared for the ambush that was about to unfold. Within moments, a crew of gunmen surged forward, firing relentlessly at close range. Castellano fell, his life extinguished in a hail of bullets, while Bellotti was cut down just as quickly. Watching from a car across the street, John Gotti, a rising capo with ambition burning hotter than ever, observed the chaos he had orchestrated and seized control of one of New York's most feared crime families. Castellano's life had been anything but ordinary. Born Constantino Paul Castellano in Brooklyn in 1915 to Italian immigrant parents, he grew up learning the family trade of butchering while secretly absorbing the lessons of loyalty and intimidation that would define his later life. His father's connections to the early Mangano crime family paved the way for Castellano's rise, and by the 1940s, he had become a respected capo under Albert Anastasia. He survived the violent underworld, building a reputation for ruthlessness and unwavering adherence to the code of omerta, refusing to betray accomplices even to avoid prison. As the years went on, Castellano transformed from a street-level operator into a businessman with a criminal edge. He turned legitimate enterprises into money-making machines, using intimidation and careful alliances to dominate the concrete business and the Teamsters Union. He built a lavish mansion on Staten Island, a fortress that mirrored his taste for grandeur and control. Yet, for all his wealth and power, Castellano's style, meticulous, detached, and far removed from the streets, would prove to be his undoing. Tensions had been brewing within the Gambino family for years. Castellano's underboss, Agnello Neil Della Croce, had commanded loyalty from the Manhattan faction, while Castellano's Brooklyn-based faction focused on business dealings and white-collar crime. Many saw Castellano as out of touch with the gritty realities of the mob, and resentment simmered, particularly among ambitious figures like John Gotti. Gotti's frustration reached a boiling point over disputes about hijackings at JFK Airport and Castellano's refusal to endorse drug operations, the most lucrative trade in the city. The final spark came when Della Croce died on December 2nd, 1985. Castellano's failure to attend the funeral insulted the Manhattan crew, and his choice of Bellotti as underboss only deepened the division. Conspirators like Salvatore Gravano plotted in secret, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When a tip revealed that Castellano would be dining at Sparks Steakhouse on the evening of December 16th, everything fell into place. The hitmen took their positions, concealed in plain sight, while Gotti and Gravano observed from a nearby car, their hearts pounding with anticipation and the knowledge that history was about to be rewritten in blood. As Castellano stepped from his car, bullets tore through the night. His head was struck with precision, and Bellotti fell beside him, a silent witness to the carnage. The street echoed with chaos, and by the time the dust settled, 2 powerful men were dead, and a new era of the Gambino family had begun. Castellano was buried without the honor of a Catholic funeral, a symbol of both his notoriety and the world he had ruled with an iron fist. Gotti's ascent to power marked a violent, dramatic shift in New York's criminal landscape, a reminder that in the underworld, loyalty is fragile, and even the most untouchable figures can fall in an instant. On the morning of October 25, 1957, Manhattan's Park Sheraton Hotel seemed like any other bustling corner of the city, its barbershop filled with the quiet hum of clippers and the occasional chatter of patrons. But inside, Albert, the Mad Hatter Anastasia, one of the most feared men in the American underworld, was about to face a fate so shocking it would be remembered for decades. Known as the ruthless head of murder Inkros, Anastasia had commanded a legion of killers and orchestrated countless hits, earning nicknames like the One-Man Army and the Lord High Executioner. Yet, in a cruel twist of irony, he would die not on the battlefield of the streets, but in a barber's chair, surrounded by mirrors and the faint scent of hair tonic. Anastasia's life had been a relentless climb through the ranks of organized crime. Born Umberto Anastasio in Calabria, Italy, he came to America as a teenager, landing on the Brooklyn waterfront, and quickly learning how to navigate a world ruled by violence, loyalty, and betrayal. He survived arrests, assassination attempts, and prison stints, his reputation cemented by his icy ruthlessness and unmatched brutality. Anastasia's rise had been meteoric, from working with Joe Masseria and Lucky Luciano during the Castellammarise War to becoming the feared enforcer and later boss of the family that would eventually bear his name. He left a trail of bodies in his wake. Despite his fearsome reputation, Anastasia's power made him enemies. His volatility and greed, coupled with his disregard for certain mafia protocols, made him a target for ambitious rivals. Vito Genovese and Carlo Gambino saw an opportunity to remove a volatile and unpredictable force from their path, and they orchestrated one of the most audacious hits in mafia history. On that fateful October morning, Anastasia, oblivious to the deadly trap, relaxed in the barber's chair. Two men, their faces obscured, stormed in, shoving the barber aside, and unleashed a storm of bullets. Anastasia tried to rise, only to collapse into the mirrors and towels around him, his life extinguished in seconds. The image of a mob boss, so accustomed to controlling life and death, reduced to a helpless figure in a barbershop, was seared into the public consciousness. The aftermath was as dramatic as the killing itself. No one was ever charged, though whispers in the underworld pointed to Gambino and Genovese pulling the strings, possibly with Joe Gallo leading the gunmen, cheekily dubbing themselves the Barbershop Quintet. Anastasia's funeral was small and unceremonious. The church refused to sanction a Catholic service for a man whose life had been defined by bloodshed. His empire was swiftly absorbed, with Gambino rising to power and reshaping the mafia landscape, proving that even the most feared men are mortal, and that in the world of organized crime, betrayal is only ever a heartbeat away. Anastasia's death wasn't just another hit, it was a chilling spectacle. A reminder that in the ruthless world of the mafia, no throne is safe, and the most terrifying figures can fall in the most mundane of places, leaving the world to gape at the shocking theater of their demise. On December 2, 1993, the streets of Medellin held their breath. Pablo Escobar, the man who had ruled Colombia's drug trade with a combination of ruthless cunning and violent ferocity, was cornered. For years, Escobar had seemed untouchable, his Medellin cartel controlling the flow of cocaine across the globe, his wealth staggering, his influence absolute. Thousands had died under his orders, yet he moved through his city with a sense of invincibility that had terrified authorities and captivated the public alike. But now, the walls were closing in. After months of evading capture, Escobar was finally traced to a modest house in the Los Olivos neighborhood, his location revealed through a desperate phone call to his family. Colombian Special Forces, the elite search block, surrounded the building, their weapons ready, hearts pounding with the knowledge that the man they were about to confront had orchestrated more deaths than most could imagine. Escobar, ever resourceful, tried to escape, climbing across the rooftops like a hunted animal. But this was no jungle to disappear into. This was a city under siege, and every step brought him closer to the end. Bullets tore through the air, striking him in the torso, his feet, and finally his head, ending the life of the man who had declared that they would never catch me in the great life. There is still debate over who fired the fatal shot, the Colombian police, a sniper from a rival paramilitary group, or even Escobar himself in a desperate final act. But the result was the same. The king of cocaine, the man who had laughed at the law and orchestrated an empire built on terror, lay dead. Escobar's death did not just mark the fall of one man, it signaled the collapse of the Medellin cartel and the end of an era of unparalleled violence in Colombia. Yet, even in death, he remained a legend. Tens of thousands attended his funeral, mourning a man who had been both a monster and, in the eyes of some locals, a Robin Hood figure who had built schools, soccer fields, and housing for the poor. He was buried in Monte Sacro Cemetery, leaving behind a legacy as infamous as it was unforgettable, a reminder that power, no matter how absolute, can always be brought to its knees.
Police in Russia say one of the main figures in the country's organized crime community has been gunned down in Moscow. Aslan Usoyan controlled a criminal group.
If there was ever a name that made the criminal world hold its breath, it was Aslan Usoyan, known to all as Grandpa Hassan. To the untrained eye, he was just another elderly man wandering the streets of Moscow. But behind the closed doors of power, he was a giant, his influence stretching from the icy streets of Moscow to the mountains of the Caucasus and deep into the remnants of the Soviet Empire. On a cold January afternoon in 2013, someone decided that Giant would finally fall. It happened in broad daylight, the kind of killing that freezes a city in place. Usoyan stepped out of a restaurant he had frequented for years, a place where deals were made and enemies carefully watched. Then came the sound, a sharp crack, followed instantly by another. Before anyone could react, Usoyan stumbled and collapsed. A sniper had been waiting patiently in a nearby apartment, rifle silenced, every shot calculated. Shell casings were later found near a window, mute testimony to the meticulous planning behind the attack. Usoyan had cheated death before. Hits had come and gone, but this time there would be no second chance. He died in the ambulance long before reaching the hospital. Word of his death spread like wildfire, not only through Moscow but across every corner of the underworld where his name carried weight. This wasn't just a murder, it was the fall of a dynasty. Usoyan's power had never been ordinary. From Soviet Georgia to Moscow, the Urals, Siberia, Uzbekistan, and Sochi, he commanded respect, fear, and loyalty wherever money and influence flowed. He was one of the most influential thieves-in-law of his time, a man whose decisions reshaped criminal empires. And with power came enemies, many who had waited decades for the chance to strike. His life was a constant battlefield. Businessmen disappeared, rival bosses were gunned down, and entire criminal clans clashed from Yekaterinburg to Tbilisi. These weren't petty turf wars, they were wars between empires. One of his fiercest rivalries was with Georgian crime boss Terio Oniani, a feud that allegedly led to a series of murders, including hits on Usoyan's lieutenants working on Sochi's Olympic construction projects. Even legendary figures like Vyacheslav Ivankov, known as Yaponchik, fell in the shadow of Usoyan's world. Killed by a sniper in 2009, Ivankov's funeral bore a massive wreath signed, "To our brother, from Grandpa Hassan," a chilling message of loyalty, or perhaps a warning. Usoyan had survived another close call in 2010, when a bullet tore into his stomach. The police even mistakenly announced his death, fearing his enemies would return to finish the job. Yet he lived. 3 more years of outmaneuvering assassins, controlling empires, and keeping the underworld in line. And then the sniper finally arrived. The moment he died, analysts warned of chaos. Younger bosses would scramble to carve up his empire. Rival Georgian factions would move in. Blood on the streets, whispered the experts. For once, there were no doubts. Suspicion immediately fell on longtime enemies like Oniani and Rovshan Janiyev, though no one was ever brought to justice. As with most underworld murders, the truth was buried beneath layers of grudges, secrecy, and silent vendettas. Even in death, Usoyan stirred controversy. His family tried to fly his body to Tbilisi, only for the airport to refuse the plane. No one ever got a clear answer why. What is undeniable is this: the sniper's shot didn't just kill a man, it ended an era. Grandpa Hassan, one of the last titans of the Soviet-era criminal world, was gone, and with him, the balance of the underworld shifted forever. If there was ever a name that carried both fear and fascination through the post-Soviet underworld, it was Rovshan Janiyev, whispered about as Lankarensky. His story didn't start with money or power. It started with blood. As a teenager, he watched his father, a police officer, gunned down by the very criminals he had sworn to stop. And at just 17, standing in a courtroom while his father's killer smirked and threatened his family, Rovshan snapped. He drew a gun and shot the man dead, right there, in front of the judge, jury, and cameras. That single act cemented his fate long before anyone called him a gangster. From that moment, his descent into the underworld was rapid and merciless. He served 2 years in prison, but the world outside was already taking shape around him. By 2002, he had been crowned a thief-in-law, a respected title in criminal circles, supported by Talish networks who saw him as one of their own. Every move he made seemed driven by a lethal mix of vengeance, ambition, and survival instinct. His rise was anything but quiet. In the early 2000s, he allegedly gunned down a prominent Baku crime boss in broad daylight, only to be beaten so severely afterward that doctors claimed he developed a mental illness, a story that helped secure his early release. The moment he walked free, he vanished from Azerbaijan and re-emerged in Moscow. And there, Rovshan didn't just join the criminal world, he began reshaping it. He quickly consolidated power, controlling Azerbaijani gangs, running vast rackets, and expanding his influence across borders. Entire ethnic networks seemed to fall under his authority, but with power came enemies, and among the deadliest was Aslan Usoyan, the legendary Grandpa Hassan. Their rivalry became the stuff of underworld legend. When a sniper nearly killed Usoyan in 2010, Rovshan's name was immediately whispered. He was soon arrested in Ukraine, a country where he already had criminal interests and rumored refugee status. When Usoyan was finally assassinated in 2013, speculation swirled again, linking Rovshan, though he denied any involvement. And when one of his closest allies, Astamir Gulia, was gunned down weeks later, the whispers of a silent war only grew louder. For years, Rovshan was everywhere and nowhere at once. Italy, Ukraine, Dubai, Interpol kept tabs on him, accusing him of money laundering, bribery, and document forgery. In 2013, he was even declared dead, only for his own brother to publicly refute the claim. He had become a ghost, alive, hunted, untouchable, mythic. But even ghosts leave traces. On the night of August 17, 2016, in Istanbul's stylish Beşiktaş district, Rovshan returned from a trip to Dubai. He climbed into his luxury Range Rover, Azerbaijani plates gleaming, unaware of the storm waiting for him. As the SUV moved through the streets, a hail of automatic gunfire shredded the vehicle. His driver was killed instantly. Rovshan was rushed to the hospital, but the bullets had done their work. Hours later, he was gone. The assassination sent shockwaves through the underworld. This wasn't a shadowy Moscow alley or a secret corner of Azerbaijan. This was Istanbul, a major international city, hit with precision and coordination. The message was clear. No one, not even a man as legendary as Rovshan, was untouchable. And if anyone doubted his mythic status, his funeral erased it. His body was flown back to Azerbaijan on a private jet owned by billionaire Mubariz Mansimov. More than 25,000 people gathered to mourn, a crowd where criminals, admirers, and ordinary citizens blended together. To some, he was a ruthless gangster. To others, a folk hero. A man who avenged wrongs, defied enemies, and dared to challenge giants when the world whispered to stay silent.